Assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal, shalom and good day. You are listening to Awaz Community Radio. And our guest for today will be Kesra Shiraz. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with us, give us a call on 0161 839 9817. We're on Facebook, just type in Awaz Community Radio or tweet us at Awaz Radio 122. Thank you for listening to Awaz Community Radio with your host Saira. And as I said, my guest today is Kesra Shiraz. Hi Kesra, thank you for coming in.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. So good to have you in the studio.
A pleasure. I'm glad I've made it this morning.
And fresh from winning an award. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Is it the Lifetime Achiever Award?
Yes, Lifetime Achiever Award with the National Diversity Award. It's the highest award you can get, prestigious one, for the work I've done over 30 years, for services to literature, to interfaith relationships, to women's rights, as well as education work.
Amazing stuff. And I mean, you must be absolutely over the moon to have won the award.
I'm happy, let's put it that, happy to have it recognized.
Fantastic. Now, to tell our listeners about yourself. Now, normally when I have a guest, Kesra, I introduce them, as to what they do.
Right.
I don't know where to begin. There are so many things that you do. You are a novelist, a script writer, college inspector, teacher, trainer, education consultant, freelance journalist. You are a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. There's so much that you do.
Right. It is over a period of time, obviously. It didn't all happen overnight. And I had different interests. I had two distinct careers. One was in writing. I wanted to write novels, but you can't make money out of novels, so that's always been the sort of side kind of career. And then the main career was in education, and with time you progress from one thing to another. And then lately, in the last 10 years or so, really heavily involved in voluntary work with interfaith relationship, promoting community cohesion, better relationships, part of many different bodies, actively involved in everywhere. And of course, throughout all my life, I've been devoted to issues to do with inclusion, equality, diversity, particularly for women's lives, women's rights, whether it's through education, through books, novels, day-to-day life, literacy, domestic violence, you name it, everything I'm sort of involved in to do with women's lives in particular, and I feel very strongly about it, and we can talk about that later.
Amazing. And of course, you're also a part of the Manchester Muslim Jewish Forum.
Absolutely. I think my colleagues came previously, haven't
yes,
they?
We've had
that is
Fletcher.
One of the roles I have, one of the strands. I'm the co-chair of Faith Network for Manchester, and also an executive member of Muslim Jewish Forum and an executive member of We Stand Together. All these different forums, networks, their status, their job is the same, basically to promote better relationships. With the Muslim Jewish Forum is really improving harmony, understanding, and improving relationship between the Muslims and the Jewish community. Faith Network is really for all faiths. We have a multi-faith center, which is our based, and it's wonderful. We have conferences, we have interfaith dialogues, we organize events, we do lots of things, and the whole idea is to bring people of faith together and people of no faith as well. And of course, in current difficult time, it's even more important for everyone to respect each other, to understand what's going on, and to stand together. And I've helped to organize events like twinning events, for example, organized an event last year with a university where we brought students of all faiths together to promote message of peace and harmony, and we're going to do the same in December 7th at Manchester University. Also, for Muslim Jewish Forum, we've got an event where we are twinning a synagogue and a mosque, and the whole idea is really bringing people together, promoting messages of peace and harmony, and saying we are standing together.
Well, that makes you just our kind of guest, Kesra. Thank
Thank you.
Now, going back to where it all began, you were born in Pakistan, excuse me, and then you moved to Manchester when you were 9 years old.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how did that feel?
Okay. Well, first of all, let's tell you first that I'm delighted I was born in Pakistan. For two reasons. One, I love Pakistani food, and because I grew up there for 9 years, I have a Pakistani palate where I love chapatis and my curries and tindi and kareli and all the rest of it. I also value my Pakistani origin because those memories of my childhood have fed my imagination, and they are the backbone of my novels. Without those memories, without that knowledge, I could never have written these books. And for me, that is really highly invaluable compared with my siblings who were born in England. They don't have any of that. And I feel I really cherish my background, my multiple identity, including Pakistani identity. So the second part of your question is, how did I feel? Well, I was old enough to realize what was going on, old enough to remember. It was a disillusionment, actually. Coming from Pakistan, I remember it was August or September, Rochdale, fog in those days, fog, this is late 60s, 67 in fact, or 68. Terraced houses, you come from big courtyard, big houses, and in those days people didn't even have toilets inside, so all of that was very dismal. And then secondly, racism, skinheads, calling your name Paki, and actually breaking a window. That was my first experience of racism. I was 9 years of age. My baby brother was born. We were in the bedroom upstairs, and somebody threw a window, and it really shocked me because the brick nearly missed my brother's head, and it was shocking. So those were the negative part, but the positive part were this: lovely teachers, beautiful, wonderful teachers, who worked with me, supported me to learn English, and we began to carve a life. And from that age onward, it's been positive experience. In fact, one of the things I spoke about in my speech on Friday night at the award ceremony is saying, I can never say thank you enough to the place where I am now, because really whatever I've done, whatever I've achieved, is to do with Britain, living in a developed country, having the opportunities, having go to universities, having equality, having diversity, having the freedom as a woman to do what I want. So it's made me who I am. So it's primarily been a very positive experience. But the early images and memories are negative too. And I talk about them to raise people's awareness. What is it like as a migrant when your first impressions can be highly negative? And also, if you're not welcomed, if people say go back home, Pakis, terrible thing to go through. And we need to remember that at the moment after Brexit, there's a lot of negative backlash, particularly against the minority community, and particularly against, for example, the Polish community. And I feel really very strongly about this.
Do you feel perhaps the Europeans are being treated the way the first, second wave of
yes,
immigrants
I
were
can
treated?
identify with them, absolutely. But the irony is, in those days, we thought, right, it's because of our colour, because of our culture, faith. Well, these are Europeans. They look the same, whatever. Just because they are from Poland, they're comfort job, people think. And that's it, they've been targeted. It's terrible. I saw recently on Channel 4 News where they were interviewing a woman, and while they're interviewing her, she's being harassed and being bullied, and literally on camera. Can you imagine living that life with fear?
That's awful.
It's unacceptable. It really is unacceptable. And our Brexit has a lot to do with them, unfortunately. It really has. It legitimized racism, legitimized people to say what they want, and if Farage can get away with it, other people can get away with it. Why can't the normal people on the streets? It's not on.
So your early experiences, they influenced you to do interfaith work as you grew?
I think I've always been interested in our background, my different faith, my Pakistani culture, all of that. And it was natural for me, like I'm sure for all of you, to appreciate your difference. And now, because since September the 11th, this is where it all started. September the 11th really changed me in a big way. I realized that having lived for many decades in England, suddenly we were treated differently. And then after that, people said, Kesra, you're a famous writer, you've got a platform, you've got a voice, speak up about it. So I'm now using it even more productively than even faith work, using literature. One of my stories, A Pair of Jeans, is being studied in German schools for the last 27 years. Can you imagine? Everybody's reading them because it's part of their syllabus. And that has given me the platform to go out to Germany. They invite me as a teacher, as the writer who's written this story. And I have often a captive audience of 200 German students from 16 to 18 years of age, and at least dozens of teachers. And that gives me time to promote my Muslim background. And one of the things I say to them, I'm a Muslim, I love my faith, but I'm not a terrorist or a suicide bomber. Please connect with people like me. So I'm actively using my writer's background and promoting my Muslim background as a role model. Say, look, it's us, not the tiny little percent who have hijacked my faith. We are the peace-loving people, billions of us around the world. Listen to us and identify. And because they identify with me as the author they study, they listen to me. And by that experience, I have managed to pass these messages. And similarly, we're doing the same with interfaith work here in England.
As you mentioned, you've written stories, you've written books. Your first collection of stories was A Pair of Jeans. And you wrote The Holy Woman, that was published in 2002.
Yes, it came out in 2001. It took me about 3 years to write. So my writing career started at the age of 14. But I was properly published from the age of 19. And in the first phase, I was doing articles for newspapers, for magazines, journalism primarily, and then I moved into short fiction. So novel writing came pretty late, and The Holy Woman was my first novel, and to this day The Holy Woman has been the most successful. It's been translated into several languages, recently in Mandarin. It's a bestseller in Indonesia. The people love it, and people just love the story. It really is a very powerful story, but it's a serious book as well. Shall I talk more about it?
Feel free to. I mean, that success must have spurred you on to write Revolt and Typhoon, your other books.
Yes. I was a different person when I wrote my first novel to the person who's now a different person, living, say, 20 odd years later, to writing my latest novel set in Morocco. At that time, I had a career in education, full-time job, managing an English department, and 3 young children. So I had quality time. Saturday morning, Sunday morning, I would sit and write, and weekdays I would direct. So I was really clued into my work. I lived with my characters. I fell in love with them. I fell in love with the world I created. And as a result of this, when I finished my first novel, The Holy Woman, I was ready to write my second novel, Typhoon. And you know what? I didn't want to let go. It was like losing a baby from your lap, and you want to hold on to it. And then I thought, well, there's a village in The Holy Woman, which is set in 5 countries and a village and a city in Pakistan. And I thought, well, there's a village in Typhoon too. And if there's a village there, well, why not make it the same village? And if you loved some of these characters, take them with you. So my advice to the listeners would be, if they're hoping to read my work, please always read The Holy Woman first, because Typhoon has become its sequel. It's set 1 year later. So if you read Typhoon first, you will know what has happened. And you know what? Because the 2 books were published as a sequel and A Holy Woman, I was very lucky. In Turkey, they were published together. In Indonesia, they were published together. In India, published together. In Pakistan, I sold both of them in several languages because they go together. Revolt was a different story, and that was a nightmare. That was written in a later phase. It took me 9 years to write. And compared with the Falling in Love with Holy Woman book, I couldn't even connect with my characters. Why? Because the last job I had with Manchester Adult Education Service that I worked for I was the quality manager. Now, Manchester Adult Education Service is the 2nd largest in the UK. Imagine holding a job like this with such responsibility. So if you've got that kind of job, how can you actually write a novel? So for 2 years, I didn't even touch my novel. When I went back to it, I wasn't happy. I thought, what rubbish have I written? And then it was the blockbuster. It took me months to go from one end to the other end. By the time you got to the other end, you forgot what you written in the first end. It took me 9 years to write the book that I was happy with. So it was a different process entirely.
The difficult middle child, as it
Sorry?
The difficult middle child, as it were.
Well, it wasn't even a child. I couldn't even connect with it in the way that the first one was. Why is this? Because by now I had become a successful woman with several careers, traveling the world, doing this, doing that. I was distracted, constantly distracted. And now I'm writing my latest novel set in Morocco. The process is even worse because I'm distracted by social media. I wrote The Holy Woman by hand. I would give it off to John, my wonderful PA, who would type it up. Well, now, 1 minute I'm on Facebook, another minute I'm on Twitter, and then I'm going back into my message, and then I'm trying to create my characters. How can you do this? So I am struggling, and also because Morocco is not my country, it's another culture, another way of life, so it's even more of a challenge. So it's a totally different process to when and how I wrote The Holy Woman.
What I think is great about these 3 novels that you've written so far, they focus on women. and they focus on women in the East, and
Yes.
I really like that.
Yes, I think that is one of my strengths. I think I have created a niche for myself. My background is in literature. I did a first degree in English and classical civilization. I did Greek and Roman and English. I did a second degree and I covered literature, again American and European literature. But you know what? I hadn't read much from Pakistan because most of, at that time when I was writing, you have the Kampla Samshis now, Nadeem, Aslam and Mohsin. At that time when I started writing, there was nobody there apart from Zulfikar Ghosh and Bapsi Sidhwa. So really, there wasn't a lot for me to read at that time. But there was plenty to read from India, and I loved it. I loved reading all those authors who wrote about India, and I used to enjoy books written about the other world. And you know, when I was writing The Holy Woman, I said, look, I want to write a literature for myself, a book for Pakistani readers, Asian readers, Muslim readers, as well as Western readers, introduce them to the world of Pakistan, another way of life. And also, do you love a love story, by the way?
Sorry, the love story film?
No, do you love love stories?
Love stories in general? Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I do.
I'm a glutton for those. You know, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen is my favorite one of the many more.
Classic.
And I thought, right, I'm also going to write a powerful love story. And I think that's primarily one of the reasons why people love The Holy Woman. It's a classic, powerful love story. But also a story about women's issues, as you just mentioned, serious women's issue about women's rights, about being controlled by the patriarchal society. What is it like to live in a developing country where you could be well educated, you could have everything, you could be modern, but really your life is still being controlled by your fathers,
And
by your
Rev-
grandparents, etc.
And Revolt tackles the conflict that a lot of women feel between Eastern and Western values.
Right, Revolt particularly covers Eastern and Western value, as you say. It, for example, mixed race marriage. I have a Pakistani man who marries an English woman, Daniela, and I show racism on both sides. And the reality is the world is at the stage where people might marry into different races. But it's not an easy process for both sides. So I have Daniela's mother who can't stand the thought of having a Pakistani Muslim brown son for her son-in-law. Similarly, his family, a wealthy family living in Pakistan, they get a shock when this Gori lands on their doorstep with her naked legs from another culture. They don't know how to cope with her. But what I'm trying to show through my work is we're all human beings at the end of the day. These differences, we need to sort of respect the difference, but also remind us of our common humanity. People will fall in love. People might want to marry from out of culture, out of faith. And we have to address those issues. And in my story, I have done that. That's one of them. The other issue I've dealt with in that novel is migration, the tragedy of migration. All over the developing world, a lot of men migrate to other countries. And one of the family I show is a family man has gone to America waiting for the green card. And the moment he gets it, he dies. And a poor family is left there waiting for 20 years to join him, waiting for this green card. They've got everything. They've got money. They've got all these wonderful electrical goods that they can afford. But really, they've lost a father, a husband, a man they've not seen for 20 years, apart from a few holidays. So really, I'm focusing on the issue of the tragedy of migration as well. And all these refugees, for example, everybody, people are forced to move for different reasons, through warfare or through economic reason, but really devastating effect on their lives, on their families, on their human relationships. Imagine children being brought up without fathers, etc. So it's an issue. And also I cover a bit of terrorism as well. What is it like for a mother who suddenly finds she doesn't know where her sons have gone, and then discovers one night he comes back and he's become another person. He's actually going to kill someone. How do you cope as a parent where you lost a child to a world of extremism? And then there's a story of 3 lovely sisters. I hope you will love it. And Gulbahar, Mehreen and Rani, wealthy landowning sisters. They're all different and they have their own problems, and they have children who have caused them problems. And you'll have to read to find out. Including the middle sister who has someone in her background. And I won't say any more.
I'm glad you're not spoiling it too much.
No.
So is there anything you're working on at the moment, Kesra?
I'm working on 2 collections. Actually, I'm working on my latest novel, as I said earlier, set in Morocco. Hoping to finish in the next few months, but really in addition to that, I suddenly have a deadline for a new collection of work. I've got a collection of stories nearly ready. I'm editing them, and they'll come out next summer, and I have to give them to my publisher agent by end of December. And this story is called The International Collection. I'm not sure of the title yet. It might be The Slave Catcher, it might be The Train to Krakow, it might be The Courtesan. Now, these stories are set in different parts of the world. I think over the period of years, I'm traveling a lot to many countries for festivals, for lecture tours, for literary tours. And you pick up ideas. For example, as part of my interfaith work, I went with a group of my Jewish and Muslim friends to the concentration camps, Auschwitz and Birkenau. And of course, you to visit places like that, of place of massacre, the gassing, the devastation that's taken place there, you are dehumanized by it. I was really affected by it, seeing these holes full of human hair, shoes, children. And straight away I had an idea. This young woman, Hella, writing a letter saying, Mama, we've got to get this train to go to Krakow. What she didn't realize, she was buying a ticket to her death. And I took that idea of this woman, Hella, and I written a story, and that is based on the Holocaust. I was stranded in Boston by chance. I was on a tour in Chicago and Arkansas Literature Festival, and the ash problem happened here in England. And as a result, all the traffic was diverted. Rather than coming to Dublin in England, it from Chicago, it went down to Boston. So I landed myself in Boston for a few days, and I went to a museum and I watched a film about the black slavery. And you know what? That was the most creative moment in my life. Can you imagine? 10 minutes, I had a full story sketched out in my head. Can you believe it? 10 minutes, a whole story from the start to the finish, and the main characters. And then I came back to England. I had to do a lot of research. And because I don't know anything about Boston, especially 19th century Boston, didn't know anything about slavery, so it was a lot of information had to be done, and I've written, and I'm really proud of that story. Another story was I was going to a festival or a book fair in Sharjah, and a taxi driver picked me up. And I got talking to him, an Afghan, and he was a migrant, and he told me that he's been working there for 20 years. And I asked him, I said, well, how often do you go back? He said, every 2 years. And I worked it in my head, oh my God, over a period of 20 years, he's probably only been for a few months with his family. And that idea I wanted to cover. So that taxi driver is in my story. And then it's also about racism. I had a fellow colleague, an inspector friend who works for Ofsted with me, and he said he went to Dubai. And there was a different way they treated the Western people, the white people, European people, to the way they treat the third world countries. And I've seen it myself, and I thought I want to tackle this issue as well. So Nigel, my friend, he came into the story, and that story is called The White Angel. And then there are other stories like Anarkali. I've got a story called The Courtesan, which is set in 16th century India, the story of Anarkali. And then I bring it to the present day. Pakistani family, Pakistani girl, student gone back to Lahore for a holiday and discovers, oh, they've got a background, and I mesh the two stories together. And there are many other stories, so I won't.
They sound really interesting.
Thank you.
And I think the issues that you are touching on, the topics, like you said about the taxi driver who has only seen his family for a few months over the last 20 years, and all these examples, they're very relevant now.
Absolutely.
To your readers.
Yes. Another story called Hafiza's Trousseau. In India and Pakistan, particularly in India, women get married and they're given a lot of presents. Well, it's one thing if you're a very wealthy family, you have a lot of things, but then it's another for a widow with hardly any income, but her daughter still wants a trousseau. So I'm really showing the human factor, what it's like to live in a rich home and a poor home, and how human envy takes it over. This girl actually steals something because she loves this dress of the other girl, and she hides it. So that's another story called Hafiza's Trousseau. So I cover real social issues, whether it's to do with men or women, but they are relevant to us at a human level.
So how can our listeners buy your books?
Right, this one is not out, but they can. A Pair of Jeans and other stories. There's lots of other stories, like the Gunga. Gunga is in my story published on Amazon. It's about people who can't speak, and I wanted have that idea explored. And another one called Prachawa. It's about women's superstition. Imagine we have this culture from, especially from India, we inherited it from, where if you had a miscarriage, some women might not come to your home thinking, I'll get the evil shadow, it will affect me. And well, I thought, what utter nonsense is this? And I've actually used that idea also in my drama serial I wrote, which is not out yet, but also in Revolt. So if you read Revolt, that story has been put in there. So that collection is called A Pair of Jeans and Other Stories. People can read that, they can get it tonight. It's an ebook though. A pair of jeans in it, stories set in England are in it, and then quite a few stories set in Pakistan. And they
Fantastic.
cover 25 years of my writing life. Pair of Jeans is the very first story I ever wrote. And people ask me, well, have you made any money? Well, I say I haven't made much money from my novels, but the one I have, if I've made anything out of, is Pair of Jeans. Can you imagine being lucky for the very first story you wrote? Why? Because it opened the doors to Germany. I get some royalties from the textbook because students use it. I also am invited for lecture tours to schools. So that story, it's an ordinary story as far as I can see, but it's the most important one, the classic story I've ever written. It's been translated into several languages, including Hindi, Chinese, Urdu, etc.
Now, it's not just books that you write. You
Yeah.
have an award-winning drama serial.
Right.
And so you've done TV as well.
Yes, I have. I've written for television. I have a master's degree in script writing. Why did I do the degree? Because I didn't know how to write a script. Writing a novel is easy. If you read novels, you know their chapters, descriptions, character. Well, what does a script look like for radio, for television? And I loved watching Pakistan drama serial. And remember, I feel very strongly about women's issues. Well, how many people are going to read my books around the world? Very rarely does it go into millions. Normally it's thousands. It's only a few authors who reach millions. And especially in Pakistan, who's going to buy book 500 rupees book first of all, and then in English? So really, if I'm aiming for the Pakistani market, the public, for social issues, I'm not going to get far with my novels. So I thought, what's the way around? And I decided that drama was it. Millions of people watch drama every night. And I wrote a drama called Dil Hi To Hai. It was shortlisted for 5 awards. It won 3 of them. And I cover the theme of dyslexia, the theme with the problem with reading, to educate people. So look, there's a problem with reading, but that doesn't mean that person is stupid. Even in England, when I wrote this, not many people were aware of this problem with dyslexia, let alone in Pakistan. So that was one theme I explored. The other theme was women and work. I know Pakistan is a developing country and opportunities for work are rare and they're only available in certain fields. But I do feel that women who want to or have the potential should work, and that's one of the themes I cover in my drama serial. In the one I've written a few years back but not produced, called Toheen, I cover domestic violence, a very important theme for me. I feel very strongly about it, especially living in England. There should be zero tolerance towards it. Violence is there in every single society of the world. It's hidden, it's not talked about, culturally still a taboo subject for our families, particularly in our culture. But I wanted to explore it in my drama. The other theme was cancer, raising awareness about cancer. People smoke everywhere over babies, children, family. About barn cancer, my brother is a consultant dentist. He showed me some slides how people can get cancer through chewing barn, and how you smoking can block your artery with all this horrible things in it. And I thought, my God, this is terrible. I've got to educate people about it. And then breast cancer, about cervical cancer. So I felt these are themes for me to discover.
That's amazing. And I mean, it's great that you've reached out to so many more female Asian, the population really, through TV, like you said.
Yes, millions of people watched it everywhere, and it was repeated. Remember, it's a drama, 14 episodes over 3 months, repeated over time. I was sitting here in Manchester, somebody's watching it in Glasgow, everybody. It was on Prime TV, it came right across the world. So I've only used it as a vehicle. I don't write, I could have written any channel for drama serials or for BBC. In fact, somebody actually asked me to write them. I just wasn't interested. I didn't have time. I was more into novels, writing novels. So I've only written scripts for television, mainly for Pakistan, really, to pass on some message. Having said that, I've got a screenplay of my first novel, The Holy Woman, as a film.
Oh, it's going to be turned into a film.
It's not. No, it's not. I've done nothing with it. I've sat on it. But as part of my master's degree, we had to do a project, either write 6 episodes of a drama series or a screenplay for a film. And my book had just come out, and I adapted it into a screenplay. So it's totally different. So when people say, oh, the film is not the same as the book, well, of course it can't be, because they're different medium. And I, as the skilled, trained scriptwriter, know that. Totally different ball game. So half of my novel went out of my book, and the characters changed. There's more conflict, more drama in the film script.
That's really amazing. And what are your plans for the future in terms of, you've told us already you're still writing, that's still part of your future.
Yeah.
How about in terms of TV work? Do you plan to do more of that?
I think I should get this drama serial. I should. It's because I don't live in Pakistan. It means that I'm not plugging in the way I could be. So that's something I must get this drama out. Can you imagine having spent over a year writing this drama, 14 episodes? So I need to have that out. Secondly, I've got 2 or 3 novels yet. Collection has to come out first, then the Moroccan novel, and then there's another story called Silence. I won't mention anything about it. That's waiting to be written. And then at the moment also to do some work in an education field, although I'm trying to pull myself out of it. But the interfaith work, the community aspect work will continue more than ever. That seems to be taking over my life, and I'm giving myself 100% to it. It's more important than ever before, because we're living through difficult times. We need to be ambassadors to fight hate crimes. We need to be ambassadors to promote peace messages, interfaith relations, but on a global level. And luckily for me, because I have the global platform, going to other countries, etc., I can do it that way. To give you one example, I was in the Philippines for our conference. I'm a director of Asia Pacific Writers. Every year we have a conference every year, one country. This year we're in China, last year we're in Philippines. And wherever I go, I give lectures at universities. And this time I was hosted in a Catholic university, the top Catholic university in Philippines, Manila. And it was an honor indeed to be hosted by them. They were thrilled to host me. I was thrilled to visit them. But the thing was this, it was a mutual respect. They honored me in such a way that when it came to, because it's a Catholic university, they always do prayers before any function. So when they had my event organized, they started with a prayer, but what did they do? They adapted the prayer to me. Can you believe that? So I was reaching out to them, telling them what it's like being a Muslim. They were reaching out to me, and I was learning about their faith. And it was wonderful, and that's what is called bridge building. You know, a country far away, all they know about Muslim is what they hear about terrorists. But by connecting with me, suddenly they had another world that they could enter into. Similarly, I learned about them. For example, they took me on a tour on the campus. Suddenly at 2 o'clock, everybody stood still. And I said, what's going on? And suddenly I could hear a loudspeaker, somebody talking, and I thought, it was a prayer time. So for me, that was a learning curve. That everybody in the university stands still, wherever you are, out in the street, out on the campus, because it's a special sermon time.
Wow, that's
so
amazing.
That was a lovely experience. And then I went to Malaysia on the same tour, and it was a Muslim university. And my message to them was this: we are Muslims, we love our faith, but we need to go beyond our own faith and learn to genuinely respect other people's faith and not reject it. So I would say, get out of your Muslim box. Learn to respect others, because everybody has their own belief, their own way of life. We have no right to think that we are, our faith is the best and we are right and other people are kafir. We can't do that. So I was promoting those kind of messages to them because they needed to hear that. And similarly, I was promoting the opposite message to the Philippine student. Look, I'm a Muslim, I love my faith, but I'm not a terrorist. Please respect me for my faith. So really, I'm trying to target different audiences. And similarly, in Pakistan, I'll talk about this, it's very important for you to hear. I went to a place called Bera in Pakistan. It's a little town, historical town. I love historical places. I saw a beautiful mosque, and in that town, there were 4 mandars. Beautiful mandars. But you know what? I was disappointed. The state of neglect of the mandar was such, I couldn't even find the name on it. Also, obviously, it's a developing country, but really for me, it was more the issue of giving relevance to certain buildings.
And these were Hindu temples?
They were Hindu ancient monuments.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on the radio, because they followed me all day. I went on the TV, and they said, what message would you like to pass to the local people? I said, look, please, please respect the monuments you have. They're archaeological remains, but also remember they were somebody's faith, buildings of faith. Just because it's not a mosque does not mean you don't respect them. So really, I was passing those messages in Pakistan as well. All the university I visited, again, it was the same message. Please look beyond your own Muslim world as well. Learn to respect Hindus, Buddhists, Jewish people, etc. And also here in England, obviously we are living with different communities, so it's easier for a person like me to talk about this community cohesion relationship. It's harder when you live in a Muslim country, and particularly the word Jewish relationship and Israel is something you don't talk about. I went to one place, and the two things I mentioned, they were sort of, what's she saying? I love India, and I have very good Jewish friends. And I said they needed to hear that. I said, look, okay, you have problem with Israel, that's one thing. But I have wonderful Jewish friends here. We get on well together, we eat together, we go together. We need to have these wonderful relationships. Politics should not divide us. Similarly, I said, look, I go to India regularly. I have wonderful friends there. Why are the politics of these countries really feeding us these negative messages? Why are we letting ourselves be divided? So I've been prepared to talk about these open topics everywhere because people need to hear this. And you know, I went to Australia the previous 2 years, and one of the first places I visited was Melbourne Synagogue. Wonderful, lovely place, the best place I've ever seen of a synagogue. They were really welcoming me. At the same time, there was a clash between in Palestine and Israel. I think it was 2 years ago, and I was on the radio, and there was a backlash here, anti-Semitic incidents here in England, and I spoke about it. I said, look, okay, that is happening there, but we need to make sure that we do not import that conflict in here and begin to hate our neighbors. We cannot have anti-Semitic incidents. And you know what? A Jewish woman phoned straight away to the radio in Adelaide. Isn't that a breath of fresh air for a Muslim woman to say this? And I did it. This is in Australia. We need to pass on this. I'm doing this with my own family. It's like a drip effect. Keep talking and say, look, I'm going with my friend to this country. I'm meeting this. We are having dinner together. They need to learn. We are neighbors. We are members of the same community. We must not. We know there are problems, definitely. I've been to Palestine. I've been to Israel. I know there are issues. We need a two-state solution, no doubt about it. I know people of Palestine are suffering. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've done it. But that is not going to influence me to hate my fellow Jewish people and blame them for it. I still need to work on those relationships. So relationships are very, very important for us to maintain those. And this is what one of our key roles in interfaith work is, maintaining those relationships and promoting better relationship. Would you agree?
I completely agree. And when you're talking about relationships, I guess the relationship that you have with your family must be incredible, because you have juggled all these amazing careers whilst raising a family as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Absolutely. I talked about this in my speech on Friday. I said I've achieved a lot, as they've recognized, but really I can't achieve this alone. You don't achieve in a vacuum. You have the support of your family. First support was from my father. He was well educated, been to a university in Pakistan. He was into education. He wanted the best for his children. And I was luckily for him, I was an achieving child. I was a passionate child. I wanted to succeed. I wanted to come top. I wanted to pass his exam. I wanted to have prizes. And I wanted to please my father. I really wanted to please my father to this day. So he was a backbone of that. He really, even when I got married, he said, oh, Kesra's still doing another degree yet. So my father was helping to monitor my career. But then my father doesn't live with me. He's not part of my married life. It's my husband. I owe a lot to my husband. He's been tremendous in the back. You know, behind every achieving man, there's a woman. Well, guess what? Behind every achieving woman, there's a man. And my husband has supported me. He's put up with a lot. Can you imagine the lifestyle I've led? To give you an example, full-time job, doing a master's degree, having a baby, and doing other things. All these things take time. There were books always littered around me. I was going to this meeting, I'm going off there, and then I became the Ofsted inspector. Well, you don't do inspections at home. You go here and there around the country. And then when I became the famous writer with books out in Indonesia, Turkey, here and there, I was out in other countries. And my husband couldn't go everywhere with me. So he stayed at home, supported the family. and helped and welcomed it all. So in a way, I got the best deal out of the marriage. He obviously has got a wife who's bringing in the income, supporting the family, achieving, and I've got a husband who's supporting me all the way. And then family, of course, I come from a family, mashallah, they've all done really well. They're consultant, radiologists, dentists, doctors, GPs, so the right environment, but we're a very close-knit family like many other Muslim families. We meet regularly together. Saturday we respect each other. And I'm like a mother to them because the younger two were born after we arrived in England. And I used to feed them. I would give them their bottles of milk. I would change their nappies. In those days we had those nappies. And they were like my sons, my children. So when my children were born, they took over the role like father figures. So it's been a tremendous close-knit family I've had. And I sometimes say to people, look, without my family, I'm nothing. You know, without my three sons, I'm nothing. Human relationships, children, husband, brothers, sisters, they're very, very important. And I think I don't want to generalize, but we are used to extended family system. We're used to several siblings. And people don't realize how enriching that is. In fact, one of my son's youngest was saying, Mama, I want to have several children, at least 3, 4. I said, why? I thought in this day and age, people are reducing them 1 to 2. He said, Mom, it's like Granddad. He's got 5 children, and everybody visits him, and it's wonderful to, when you're older, to look after you and this and that. And it's a lovely atmosphere. And I thought, wow, he's right. He said, not that I could afford. He said, their fees will be so much. So what he was talking about was he really cherished how valuable this background of siblings and extended family system is, and their mother has benefited from it.
That's fantastic.
And my mother looked after my children, by the way. While I was working, I would drop them off. She would look after them, and my sons grew up with grandparents. So I'm very, very lucky. I have had all the positive experiences in my life which have contributed to who I am.
That's amazing. And, and like you said, support is everything.
Absolutely.
Having
You
had your family
can't.
around
Yeah,
you.
without support you can't. I think if I was married to an achieving man, there would be rivalry. There would be it would be more difficult. So I think having the space, the freedom, and the fact I'm in England, it has made a difference. I sometimes wonder, I go to Pakistan, if I was in a little village there, not educated, married off early, had several children, all I'm doing is washing clothes, doing this, how could I ever write books? We're talking about different lives here. So really, it's the context. People say I've achieved a lot. So yes, it's because I'm lucky. I was in the right place, with the right environment, with the right opportunity, with the right home, and the right family atmosphere. That let me thrive. And this is what we need to create for all the girls in the world. So I work very hard on reading, on literacy for women, to make sure that women like us who have achieved, make sure other women, we are doing enough for other women so they too can have opportunities. And by the way, I worked in Oldham for 12 years, opportunities for women. And one of the things I was doing there was working with Asian women. For me, a woman who can write her name for the first time is equivalent to a PhD degree. For her, that is a big step, a real big step. And I've seen women thrive from writing their name to learning English, to doing voluntary work, to doing paid job. And the tremendous impact on their family. The children are so proud. Wow, Mama has done a course. Mama's got a file of work. Mama's got a job. It makes such a difference. And I've been part of that process, and I loved it.
Do you think things are getting better for women? I mean, over the space of your career, do you think that there are more opportunities now? Do you think there's more emphasis on going for equality?
I should think so. I hope so. As I say, I don't know for everyone, but I think now with the second, third generation living in England, it should be. And also, to be honest with you, women are wanting to work because they have to work. It's very difficult to survive in a developed country without work. And to find jobs is difficult if you don't have education. And even the families at home, the husbands, the parents realize work for women is very important. So in that way we have progress. Whereas in the first generation, people like my mothers, they didn't have this sort of world. They were a generation of their own. Women who stayed at home, perhaps did some sewing. They were sort of cut off from basically the world that we are living in. So hopefully we've gone beyond that. But I can't say, I don't know, there might be research out there that the women still not having the opportunity. Perhaps there are still barriers. Obviously, women, I think, in many jobs right at the top in England, the data will prove that they're still behind the scenes. We're still being discriminated against, but I can't really concretely say in what and how unless you're backed by data. All I'm hoping is that things have improved. They have to improve.
But you don't feel so positive about the outcome of the referendum that we just had, as you said?
Absolutely not. I'm still terribly dismayed. It really, for me, it has affected me in my personal life. I feel we've lost out in many ways. Better to belong to a big body for security as a Muslim. I would have felt better protected belonging to the European Court. Also, we want to be part of the whole world team rather than being isolated, excluded from it. But also at a personal level, it's affected me. I go often to Germany. Well, now I'll have to buy a visa. I'll have to pay for it. Opportunities are fewer for us compared with that. And there's many issues like university funding will be reduced. The farmers, people don't realize the knock-on effect. And then there's thousands of people who are actually living there. People just think people are coming here, but people are living here to go to Europe to live. So people's lives have been affected. So I have been extremely disappointed, really have. And as I say, it's personally affected me as well.
So what do you think?
But more importantly, as we talked about earlier before this interview, was racism. Terrible impact of racism on people's life. We really have gone backwards. And Brexit brought hatred into the equation. It legitimized it in every way.
Do you feel you're going to be working harder than ever
Absolutely.
to try and repair
this is
the
it.
damage?
This is why I feel I'm being forced to work more at this community level than ever before to tackle this. And because I'm a public person, I'm sort of forced into this role. And I feel nothing is more important than this. It really is. For example, talking about Burkini, this idiotic fiasco. Well, I had to write posts, I had to talk about it, write about it. We can't just let something like this happen, the Burkini ban. So these outside factors are forcing us to speak up. If we don't, we'll really get trodden and trodden and trodden.
And I mean, the Burkini ban, it was mentioned in all over the media for quite a while. What were your thoughts about that? I feel like I already know, but
yes,
how did you feel about?
I just saw utter fiasco. For me, issue of equality is there. Women have a right to dress the way they want to, whether they want to wear a scarf, they want to wear a niqab, they want to wear a burqa, or they don't want to wear a burqa. It's an equality issue. If a woman, say in Pakistan, doesn't want to cover full head, nobody has a right to say, you've got to cover it. Similarly, here, if somebody says, take off your scarf, who the hell is that person to tell that person? It's my body, my face, my dressing. I want to do nobody can dictate that to me. So for me, it's not just politics, it's an equality issue. Nobody has a right to tell people how women should dress or not dress.
We had feedback from our listeners saying that it was very heartening to hear and see non-Muslim women stand up for Muslim women to wear what they want.
I know, the whole thing was so idiotic. They lost the plot, basically. I believe they lost the plot. They really have, because it was just beyond forcing a woman on a beach with guns, everything, to move. For goodness sake, what are you doing?
It was a real example of how fear took over.
No, it really was. But also, it was a slap in their face. They didn't realize how idiotic it appeared in the world scene. It really, and the irony is, I have 2-3 friends in Paris, and they actually believe in the ban because they're part of that secular society, believe in it. So it was very difficult for them to see it the way we were seeing it. So really it led to a lot of discussion on my Facebook, etc. And I'm all full of it. I'm going to China for our annual conference, and I'm a keynote speaker. And what is it called? Writing and Muslim Women, Ideas and Realities. And that will be one of the things I'll talk about, the Burkini ban. It's idiotic.
Well, I believe as you're going to China, I don't know how warm it'll be this time of year, but there is a trend in China where it's not just the body, they're covering up their faces with little holes for eyes and mouth, which is a trend purely to protect their skin.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I saw that in San Francisco 2-3 years ago. People had covered their face because of a certain virus. So that is, I don't know, as I say, it's a personal choice how you dress. Nobody has a right to dictate that. But the bigger issue is, how can you dictate that at a country level to say, but really, for me, it's Islamophobia. That's behind it. Islamophobia, hatred being stirred up, and other people following it because, all right, there's a ban there. Well, Germany says, well, we'll do the same, banning people from wearing the scarf. That's part of their faith. That's part of their identity. How can anybody rule out, say, I'll tell you what to dress? And these are developed countries, democracies, countries which celebrate freedom of speech. Well, what are they doing here? They're pulling people's scarves off, literally telling them to remove them. So in a way, the Islamophobia has driven these people to behave like this. So in a way, it shows them what is really at stake here is Islamophobia, hatred.
It's pleasing to meet people like yourself who are doing all they can to tackle Islamophobia.
Yeah, well, it's keeping us busy, to be honest with you. I want to use my energies for my novel, not writing about Burkini ban, to be honest with you.
You don't want to spend another 9 years writing the next novel.
You know, but I'm forced to, I'm having to, I have a voice, I feel strongly about it, as I feel very strongly about women. I'm having to do it. And then I think, wish to God, leave us alone. Women. The other thing I've not mentioned is I actually interviewed nearly 100 women around the world. Indonesia, China, Singapore, not China, sorry, India, Singapore, Germany, Pakistan, etc. And you know what? Every single Muslim woman is unique, different. We are a product of the world we live in, of our belief, our class, our education, etc., etc. And yet everybody is being pigeonholed. Always Muslim women are being stereotyped. To give you one example, I don't know if you've been to Lahore. There's a famous road called Mall Road. Well, in Pakistan, it's dictated by society, by the class you belong to, the education. If you go at one end of the road, other end, inside the city, you have women totally clothed and with chadar and everything, with their men. At the other end, you'll have women who'll be with bare arms, even their ankles showing, smoking, leading very free life. That's to do with class. They're Pakistani women, they're Muslim women. So who says they're the same? A woman living from Somalia, migrated from Somalia, living in Norway, well, she's going to be different from a little village in Kashmir, isn't she? A Chinese Muslim will be different from, say, a Nigerian woman, because part of our faith also gives us room for development in terms of culture. We actually adapt the local culture as part of it as well, which is right and reasonable. We have to, because as human beings, we have our own roots, we have our own culture, we have our own customs, and we should be able to adapt our way of life to those without compromising the main principles of our faith.
What I wanted to ask, my final question is that as somebody who's just won the Lifetime Achievement Award, what would you say, this could be a hard question to answer, what would you say is your greatest achievement to date?
Greatest achievement to date? I think being a good daughter.
I had a feeling you might come back to family.
I think as being good, my mother appreciated me very much for the role I played in my family. For me, that is obviously I've achieved with my novels, I've achieved, those are to do with working lives. I appreciate all of that. But I think being well grounded and being a kind person to people, and my mother appreciated all those qualities. My mother didn't have degrees, she didn't know half the things I went, but what she appreciated me was I was a good daughter, I was a helpful daughter, a supportive daughter, a gentle daughter who listened, who helped, who loved her family, supported them. And I've sort of gained all the qualities from my mother. I learned her wisdom, and she appreciated that. I feel the other thing I feel proud of is I'm still a member of my community. I've never forgotten who I am. I take pride in the fact that I'm still very much a Desi, part of the Pakistani Muslim community, as well as being the international figure. And the fact I'm humble, the fact I'm well grounded, it's good to know that I'm still able to hold on to that. And hopefully a good mother too.
Thank you very much. It's been so lovely speaking to you today, Kesra, and learning more about what you've done and about your books, about, and the inspiring words about, you are an activist, you are a feminist, you are, I don't like to use labels and tags,
yes.
but you are
I am
such
a feminist,
a wonderful human being who's trying to make the lives of fellow human beings a lot better.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming
Thank
on
you
our radio.
so much for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, Sarah.
And we hope to have you back in soon again. You know,
Inshallah, why not?
when the next book is out. I'm keeping my fingers crossed it doesn't take a decade or anything.
No. The collection story, there's a deadline. They have
Right.
to come out in July, so I'll be promoting those. But the Moroccan novel will take another year.
Okay, well,
Yes.
we'll look forward to having you back in the studio again.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. You've been listening to Awaz Community Radio with Saira, and guest as a speaker today was Kestra Shiraz. Now, if you'd like to learn more about our radio station and about our shows, give us a call on 0161 839 9817. You can catch us on Facebook, just type in Awaz Community Radio. Email us, awazcommunityradio@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can get Kestra's books available on Amazon and all good bookstores. Don't forget to read The Holy Woman by Kestra Shiraz. That was the first book that she did. And Typhoon is a sequel to The Holy Woman. Also, it's in many languages. Her second book was Revolt. Don't forget, you can get them online or all good bookstores. Thank you for listening and take care.